The midnight arrival. The storm lashed against Owen Mercer's cabin with unusual ferocity, wind howling through the pines surrounding his isolated home. Lightning split the sky, illuminating his cluttered workshop, where he hunched over a half-finished drone, soldering iron in hand. 3 years of self-imposed exile had taught him to appreciate these moments, just him, his inventions, and the comforting soundtrack of nature's fury. The knock came during a thunderclap, so faint he almost dismissed it as debris hitting the porch. But then it came again, 3 distinct taps against wood. "Who the hell?" Owen muttered, setting down his tools. Nobody visited him, especially not during midnight storms. His nearest neighbor lived 5 miles down the mountain road. Another knock, weaker this time. Owen grabbed the baseball bat he kept by the door, a habit from his less peaceful days, and peered through the peephole. A hooded figure swayed on his porch, one hand braced against his doorframe, the other clutching their side. Lightning flashed again, and in that split-second illumination, Owen caught a glimpse of something impossible. Fingers too long and slender, skin with an iridescent blue-green shimmer. Against his better judgment, he opened the door. "Please." The voice was melodic yet strained, distinctly feminine. "Sanctuary." She collapsed forward. Owen dropped the bat and caught her, stumbling back into his hallway. She was remarkably light in his arms, like holding a bird with hollow bones. The hood fell away, and Owen's breath caught in his throat. Her face was almost human, high cheekbones, full lips, a straight nose, but the similarities ended there. Her skin shimmered with tiny scales in patterns that shifted like oil on water. Where human ears would be, she had delicate fin-like structures that pulsed with her labored breathing. And her eyes, almond-shaped and enormous, were solid silver without pupils or whites. "What are you?" he whispered. She didn't answer. Unconscious, her head lolled against his chest. Only then did Owen notice the dark liquid seeping through her clothes. Not red blood, but something viscous and purple that glowed faintly in the dim light. He carried her to his couch, carefully laying her down. Years of solitude had made him crusty with social niceties, but he was fairly certain standard hospitality applied to extraterrestrial visitors too. "Don't die on my couch," he muttered, retrieving his first aid kit. The reviews would be terrible. The wound on her side revealed itself when he gently moved her cloak, a jagged tear that pulsed with that strange luminescent fluid. He hesitated, unsure if human medicine would help or harm her, but her pained whimper pushed him to action. As he cleaned the wound, she stirred, those silver eyes blinking open to fix on him with unsettling intensity. "You didn't call authorities," she whispered, voice like wind chimes. "Why?" Owen shrugged, applying gauze to the wound. "I'm not exactly on speaking terms with authority figures. Besides, seems like you came here specifically to avoid them." She studied him, those mercury eyes unblinking. "Your world believes itself alone in the cosmos." "Some of us have always known better," Owen replied, taping the bandage in place. "I'm Owen, and you are?" "Nithara," she said, then added something, in a language that sounded like singing glass. "Fourth Sentinel of the Veiled Nebula." "Well, Fourth Sentinel," Owen said, offering a glass of water. "What exactly brought you to my doorstep on the worst night of the year?" Nithara's fin-like ears fluttered as she took the glass with trembling hands. A single tear slid down her cheek, catching the lamplight like a diamond. "They hunt me," she whispered, "and if they find me, your world will burn." Starlight tears. Owen stared at Nithara, her words hanging in the air between them. The cabin creaked around them as the storm intensified, rain drumming against the roof like impatient fingers. "That's quite the introduction," he finally said, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Maybe start from the beginning?" Nithara's silver eyes darted to the windows, scanning the darkness beyond. "They may already be tracking my biological signature. I shouldn't have come here, endangered you." "Hey," Owen said, gentler than he'd spoken to anyone in years. "You're injured. Whatever's out there can wait until we get you patched up properly." He helped her sit upright, noticing how her skin temperature fluctuated. Cool one moment, almost fever-hot the next. The purple fluid had stopped seeping from her wound, but the bandage glowed faintly beneath his hasty medical work. "Your dwelling," Nithara observed, looking around at the cluttered cabin with its workbenches covered in half-finished inventions. "It's isolated, defensive," Owen snorted. "That's one way of putting it. I prefer strategically removed from humanity's nonsense." Her head tilted an oddly bird-like gesture. "You hide too." That struck uncomfortably close to home. Owen busied himself making tea, an automatic gesture of hospitality his mother had drilled into him long ago. "I'm an engineer," he said, avoiding her observation. "I design drones and remote sensing equipment. Companies pay me to solve problems without having to deal with my charming personality." "A creator of machines," she said with newfound interest. "Perhaps that's why I was guided here." Owen returned with 2 steaming mugs, offering one to her. "Guided by what? GPS gone wrong?" Nithara accepted the mug, inhaling the steam with her strange gill-like nostrils fluttering. "By the remnants of my ship's navigation system, calibrated to seek technological aptitude, before it burned in your atmosphere." She sipped the tea cautiously, then her eyes widened in apparent delight. "This contains molecules similar to our ceremonial keltha." Owen settled into his armchair across from her. "Now about that world will burn comment." Nithara's expression darkened. Was a sentinel. We monitor boundaries between realms, ensuring peace between species across galaxies." Her fingers traced patterns in the air as she spoke, leaving faint phosphorescent trails. 3 solar cycles ago, a faction called the Vorith seized control of our council. They believe expansion is necessary for survival. "Let me guess," Owen said. "Earth is next on their real estate wish list? Your world has something they desire greatly." Nithara's voice dropped to a whisper. "Water in such abundance freely, flowing on your surface. My people evolved in oceans, but our homeworld is dying, its waters turning toxic." She extended her arm, revealing intricate patterns beneath her skin that pulsed with bioluminescence. "I carry genetic codes, keys to alternative solutions, terraforming techniques that would save our world without conquering yours. The Vorith hunt me because I refuse to let them take your planet." Owen watched those patterns dance beneath her skin, mesmerized. "And these Vorith, they followed you here?" "Their hunters were close when my ship failed." Nithara's eyes clouded with something like fear. "I ejected before impact, but they will have tracked the debris field." A tear slipped down her cheek. Not clear like human tears, but shimmering with tiny points of light like liquid starlight. It struck Owen's wooden floor with a soft hiss, leaving a tiny, perfectly circular mark. "Your tears," he murmured, leaning closer. "Concentrated minerals from my homeworld's oceans," she explained. "Toxic to most Earth materials." Owen's mind was already racing, calculating possibilities, threats, and, most pressing, how to keep her hidden. "How long until these hunters find us?" "Hours, perhaps. Their technology is formidable." Her fin ears flattened against her head. "I should leave, drawing them away. With that wound." "You wouldn't make it a mile," Owen interrupted. He stood, already moving toward his workshop. "Besides, they're tracking your biological signature, right? Then we need to mask it." Nithara watched him with cautious hope. "You would help me? Knowing the danger?" Owen paused at the workshop door, a half-smile on his face. "Turns out I'm not great at turning away wounded fugitives from space. Character flaw, I guess." For the first time, Nithara's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "Perhaps not a flaw at all, Owen Mercer." Owen felt something long dormant stir in his chest as he turned to his workbench. He'd left human connections behind years ago for good reasons, but as he began gathering components for a signal jamming device, he wondered if perhaps the universe had other plans for his solitude. Outside, unnoticed through the storm-lashed windows, a faint red light descended toward the distant forest. Hunters in the dark dawn arrived with unsettling calm after the storm. Owen stood at his cabin window, scanning the forest edge with old military-grade binoculars. The rising sun painted the pine trees gold, but he wasn't admiring the view. He was looking for movement, for anything that didn't belong. "See anything?" Nithara asked from behind him. She'd regained some strength overnight, though she still moved gingerly, one hand pressed to her bandaged side. "Nothing obvious," Owen replied, lowering the binoculars. "But that doesn't mean they're not out there." He turned to examine his handiwork. Nithara wore what looked like a modified climbing harness across her torso, except this one contained a network of copper wiring and small devices harvested from various electronics around his cabin. The centerpiece was a repurposed signal jammer he'd built for a client years ago, now recalibrated to emit a specific electromagnetic frequency. "How does it feel?" he asked, adjusting a connection near her shoulder. "Strange," she admitted. "Like being wrapped in static. But it doesn't hurt." Owen nodded. "It should mask your biological signature, at least from a distance. Up close." He shrugged. "Let's hope we don't have to test that." He'd worked through the night, fueled by black coffee, and the strange energy that came from having someone else in his space after so long alone, especially someone whose tears could burn through wood and whose blood glowed in the dark. "Your technology is primitive," Nithara observed, "but remarkably adaptable." "Thanks, I think," Owen muttered, packing essentials into a weathered backpack. "We can't stay here. My truck's hidden in the shed out back. We'll take the logging roads down the mountain, avoid main highways." "Where will we go?" Nithara's silver eyes followed his movements, watchful and wary. Owen hesitated. "There's someone who might help. Someone who knows things about visitors like you. Another human aware of cosmic species?" "Something like that." Owen zipped the backpack with more force than necessary. "We haven't spoken in 3 years, but Juniper always had connections in strange places." Before Nithara could question him, further, a high-pitched whine cut through the morning quiet, like metal under extreme stress, but with an unnatural harmonic that set Owen's teeth on edge. "They're here," Nithara whispered, her scales flashing with patterns of alarm, colors rippling across her skin in waves of deep blue and violet. Owen grabbed his rifle from above the fireplace, another relic from his past life, and gestured toward the back door. "Go. Shed's 50 yards straight back. I'll be right." The front window exploded inward in a shower of glass. Owen tackled Nithara to the floor as something metallic skittered across the wooden planks. Not a grenade, but a hovering sphere the size of a baseball, studded with sensors and emitting that same eerie whine. "Scanner probe," Nithara hissed. "If it maps me." Owen didn't hesitate. He brought the rifle butt down hard on the device, smashing it against the floorboards. It sparked and twitched but continued functioning, a red beam sweeping the room. "Run!" he shouted, grabbing Nithara's arm and pulling her toward the back of the cabin. They burst through the rear door into the crisp morning air. The shed loomed ahead, its weathered doors partially open, but between them and safety, a figure stepped from the tree line. Humanoid but wrong in ways that triggered primitive fear responses in Owen's brain. Nearly 7 feet tall, it wore what appeared to be armored plates that shifted and realigned, with each movement like a second living skin. Where a face should be was a smooth, reflective surface that swirled with patterns similar to Nithara's skin markings, but in harsh crimson and black. "Vorith Hunter," Nithara breathed, her voice barely audible. The hunter tilted its featureless head, the reflective surface rippling as if in recognition. It raised an arm, revealing a weapon that seemed fused to its limb rather than held. "Divergent Sentinel Nithara," it spoke, the voice eerily musical yet devoid of emotion. "Your genetic material is required for the continuation of our species. Surrender and your termination will be efficient." "Such a tempting offer," Owen muttered, positioning himself slightly in front of Nithara, "but I'm afraid she's not available for termination today." The hunter's head tilted again as if puzzled by Owen's interference. "Human involvement is irrelevant. Step aside or be eliminated." Owen responded by raising his rifle and firing 3 rapid shots. The bullet struck the hunter's chest and seemed to sink into the armor, absorbed without effect. Conventional weapons cannot harm Vorith exoskeleton, Nithara said urgently. Thanks for the heads up, Owen replied, already backing them toward a narrow path that led into the dense forest rather than toward the shed. Their escape plan was crumbling, but he knew these woods better than any alien hunter could. The hunter advanced with unsettling grace, each movement fluid yet mechanical. Resistance extends suffering unnecessarily. So does conversation, Owen retorted, pulling a small device from his pocket, a remote detonator. Good thing I'm a fan of unnecessary things. He pressed the button. Behind the hunter, Owen's shed erupted in flames and smoke, the explosion powerful enough to knock them all off balance. The hunter stumbled, momentarily disoriented. Sorry about your truck, Nithara said as Owen grabbed her hand. Less talking, more running, he replied, pulling her into the forest's protective embrace. As they fled deeper into the trees, the morning sunlight fractured through branches above them, and Owen realized with grim certainty that his quiet life of solitude had just gone up in flames. Quite literally. The hidden sanctuary pine needles crunched underfoot as Owen and Nithara pushed deeper into the forest. They'd been moving for hours, following game trails and creek beds to mask their scent and footprints. The mountain air grew thinner as they climbed, but Owen maintained a relentless pace. Your breathing is labored, Nithara observed, her own respiration seemingly unaffected by the altitude. We should rest. Owen shook his head, scanning the ridge ahead. That hunter will have called for reinforcements. We need to reach the old fire lookout by nightfall. His muscles burned with exertion, but fear proved a powerful motivator. The image of that featureless face, that living armor absorbing bullets like they were nothing, it kept his feet moving despite exhaustion. Nithara moved with surprising agility despite her injury, her movements fluid and precise. Occasionally, she would pause, head tilted as if listening to frequencies beyond human perception. 2 hunters now, she announced during one such stop. They're tracking in a spiral pattern from the cabin. Efficient, but predictable. Owen wiped sweat from his brow. How can you tell? Sentinels are trained to detect Vorith communication signatures. Her silver eyes narrowed. Their exoskeletons emit subtle vibrations when exchanging data. The sun began its descent behind, the mountains painting the sky in deepening shades of orange and purple. Finally, they crested a steep incline, and the fire lookout came into view. A weathered structure perched on stilts, offering a 360-degree view of the surrounding wilderness. Up there? Nithara asked skeptically. Just temporarily. Owen led her to the base of the structure where, instead of climbing the ladder to the lookout itself, he pushed aside a cluster of boulders, revealing a hidden metal door set into the mountainside. The lookout's just a marker, he explained, entering a code on a keypad that looked decades old. This is where we're going. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a dimly lit tunnel that sloped gently downward into the mountain. Nithara hesitated at the threshold. It's some kind of bunker? Owen's expression darkened. Juniper called it the sanctuary, part of a network built by people who've been preparing for visitors like you, I guess. Though not all of them are as friendly. They descended into the tunnel, the door sealing automatically behind them. Motion-activated lights flickered to life as they walked, illuminating a passage carved directly into the rock. After several minutes, the tunnel opened into a cavernous space that made Nithara gasp. The sanctuary was a marvel of resourcefulness, a subterranean complex with walls covered in a patchwork of screens, servers, and communication equipment. Some looked military-grade, others cobbled together from consumer electronics. Hydroponic gardens lined one wall, growing vegetables under artificial sunlight. Living quarters were sectioned off with repurposed shipping containers, converted into surprisingly comfortable-looking spaces, and they weren't alone. Owen Mercer, a voice called from across the room. I'd say it's good to see you, but we both know you wouldn't believe me. A woman emerged from behind a bank of computers. She was tall and lean, with close-cropped silver hair and dark skin, marked with intricate tattoos that curled from her temples down her neck. Despite her apparent age, somewhere in her 60s, she moved with the confident grace of someone much younger. Juniper, Owen acknowledged stiffly. Still playing doomsday prepper, I see. Juniper's weathered face broke into a grin. And you're still a pain in my ass. Some things never change. Her sharp eyes shifted to Nithara, widening slightly. Though, some things do. You've brought a friend. She needs help, Owen said simply. Juniper approached Nithara slowly, studying her with undisguised fascination. Luminous dermal patterns, gill structures adapted for oxygen extraction. You're Aquarian, aren't you? From the Helios sector? Nithara's fin ears fluttered in surprise. Close. Valiran, from the outer nebula of Helios. Impressive identification, Owen muttered. Don't act so surprised, Juniper replied. While you've been playing hermit, I've been documenting every extraterrestrial encounter on this continent for the past 30 years. She gestured for them to follow her to a circular table embedded with touch screens and holographic projectors. Now tell me why you've got Vorath hunters on your tail. Their kind don't usually venture this far into what they consider primitive space. As Nithara explained her situation, Owen watched the reunion of these two very different parts of his life with a strange sense of disconnection. 3 years ago, he'd walked away from Juniper and her network of conspiracy theorists and alien truthers, convinced they were delusional, despite his own military experiences, suggesting otherwise. Now here he was, standing in their hidden base, with living proof that they'd been right all along. The genetic codes you carry, Juniper said thoughtfully when Nithara finished. They're for atmospheric conversion, aren't they? A way to restore your home world's oceans without colonizing. Ours, Nithara nodded. My people are divided. The Vorath faction believes conquest is our only hope for survival. Those of us who oppose them are eliminated. And if they capture you? Owen asked. They'll extract the codes, corrupt them to accelerate Earth's hydrological transformation. Your oceans would become compatible with our biology while becoming toxic to yours. Her silver eyes met his. Your world would drown, while mine thirsted. The gravity of her words settled over the room. Owen felt a chill despite the controlled temperature of the bunker. Well, Juniper said, breaking the silence, we can't let that happen, can we? She activated the table's interface, bringing up satellite imagery of the surrounding mountains. First priority is reinforcing that biological signature mask you've cobbled together, Owen. Second is establishing a secure communication channel to Nithara's resistance faction. You can do that? Nithara asked, hope brightening her voice. Juniper's smile was fierce. Honey, I've been sending messages to the stars since before this one was born. She jerked a thumb toward Owen. The question is whether your people are still listening. For the first time since her arrival on Earth, Nithara's posture relaxed slightly. They are listening. Always. Outside the mountain sanctuary, darkness had fallen completely. In the night sky above, invisible to human eyes, the stars watched, with ancient patience as new alliances formed in the face of common threats, a pattern as old as the universe itself. Whispers across stars' morning in the sanctuary brought a flurry of activity. Juniper's network had expanded since Owen's departure, now including 3 other survivors who drifted in and out of the common area with curious glances at their extraterrestrial guest. Theo, a former quantum physics professor with wild hair and wilder theories. Dahlia, whose expertise in xenobiology apparently stemmed from actual encounters rather than speculation. And Rook, a silent figure whose background remained unclear but whose technical skills rivaled Owen's own. They worked together upgrading Nithara's biological signature mask, converting it from Owen's improvised harness into something more elegant, a pendant containing miniaturized components that hung around her neck, pulsing with soft blue light against her iridescent skin. The frequency modulation is perfect, Dahlia said, scanning Nithara with a modified medical device. To any Vorath, sensors you'll register as background radiation, nothing more. We've also reinforced the bunker's shielding, Theo added, his fingers dancing across multiple keyboards simultaneously. If they somehow track you here, they'll need more than those fancy exoskeletons to get through. Nithara nodded gratefully. but her attention was focused on the communication array where Juniper and Owen huddled together, attempting to establish contact with her people. The encryption sequence is evolving too quickly, Owen muttered, frustration evident in his voice. Every time we think we've locked onto the right frequency, it shifts. That's by design, Nithara explained, joining them. Valyrian communications adapt constantly to prevent interception. She placed her hand on the console, her skin luminescence brightening. May I? Owen stepped back, watching as her fingers moved across the interface with practiced precision. The strange symbols flowing across the screen seemed to respond to her touch, rearranging into new patterns. Biological authentication, Juniper observed with fascination. Your DNA is the key. A soft chime emanated from the speakers, followed by a voice that seemed to flow like liquid crystal, similar to Nithara's but deeper, more resonant. The language was incomprehensible to human ears, musical and mathematical all at once. Nithara responded in kind, her voice taking on harmonics that made the air itself seem to vibrate. The conversation continued for several minutes while the humans watched in silence. Finally, she turned to them, her expression both relieved and troubled. My people have received our transmission. A rescue vessel approaches, but it cannot land. Earth's defense systems would detect it immediately. What defense systems? Owen asked. Our military isn't equipped to track advanced spacecraft. Juniper exchanged a knowing look with her team. That's what they want you to believe. After the Roswell incident, a shadow coalition formed, multinational, operating outside normal chains of command. They've been shooting down visitors for decades. Not all visitors, Dahlia corrected. Just those who don't make the right deals. Owen's jaw tightened. Some part of him had always suspected similar truths during his military service. Unexplained orders, equipment that shouldn't exist, operations that vanished from all records. How long until your rescue arrives? He asked Nithara. 3 rotations. Of your planet, she replied. But the Vorith hunters will triangulate this location before then if we remain stationary. Rook spoke for the first time, voice surprisingly soft. Then we move. Constantly. With what? Owen demanded. My trucks, in pieces back at the cabin. Juniper's smile turned mischievous. You think this is my only sanctuary? She activated another console, bringing up a map dotted with locations across the mountain range. We have a network, transportation between sites. We can stay ahead of them, Theo said confidently. Keep moving, keep broadcasting the rendezvous coordinates to Nithara's people. As they prepared to evacuate, loading essential equipment into rugged all-terrain vehicles hidden in another section of the bunker, Owen found himself alone with Nithara for a moment. Why did you really come to my cabin? He asked quietly. Of all the places you could have landed on this planet, why there? Nithara's silver eyes met his. Your isolation pattern matched mine. A soul who chose solitude but not out of fear, out of protection. For yourself. For others. Her hand brushed his, cool and warm at once. Sentinels recognize guardians across species. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition neither had expected nor sought, but which had formed nonetheless. Owen's hand closed around hers briefly before they rejoined the others. For 3 days they executed their plan with military precision, moving between sanctuaries, never staying in one location for more than 8 hours. The Vorith hunters remained, in pursuit always one step behind, their frustration evident in increasingly destructive search patterns. On the dawn of the 4th day, they reached the final sanctuary, a converted missile silo deep in the wilderness. As they established the last communication link with Nithara's approaching rescue vessel, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. They've found us, Juniper announced grimly, checking the security feeds. 3 hunters, approaching from different vectors. The rescue vessel is in position, Nithara said, her skin pulsing with urgent patterns. But they cannot descend further without detection. Owen studied the tactical display, mind racing. We need a distraction, something to confuse Earth's defense systems and the Vorith simultaneously. Rook nodded, already moving toward the equipment bay. Electromagnetic pulse cascade. We can trigger it from the old satellite array on the mountain peak. That would disable all electronics in a 50-mile radius, Theo protested. Exactly, Owen said, understanding Rook's plan. In that confusion, Nithira's people can slip through, undetected, but someone has to manually trigger it. The silence that followed contained an unspoken understanding. Juniper broke it first. You always did have a flair for the dramatic exit, Owen. He smiled tightly. Old habits. The plan came together quickly. Rook and Owen would reach the satellite array while the others protected Nithira. The rescue vessel would use the electronic blackout to land briefly at predetermined coordinates. As Owen prepared to leave, Nithira approached him, her expression solemn. You risk everything for someone not of your world, she said softly. Maybe that's exactly why, he replied. Because I've seen enough of humanity to know we need to be reminded of something bigger than ourselves. Her hands framed his face, cool against his skin. My people have a belief that consciousness echoes across stars, finding similar patterns regardless of physical form. Perhaps that's why you recognized me that night, despite all differences. Perhaps, he agreed, allowing himself to lean slightly into her touch. She pressed something into his hand, a small crystal that pulsed with the same bioluminescence as her skin. A beacon, she explained, if you survive what comes and wish to follow. The final confrontation unfolded in a blur of motion and light. Owen and Rook reached the satellite array just as the Vorith hunters breached the sanctuary's outer defenses. The EMP device activated with a silent flash that expanded outward like an invisible tide, drowning all electronics in sudden, complete darkness. In that manufactured night, a vessel descended, sleek and silent, touching down just long enough for a desperate exchange. When power returned hours later, Owen stood alone on the mountainside, the small crystal warm in his palm. Below, the remnants of the sanctuary smoldered from the Vorith's frustrated attack. But the hunters themselves had vanished, recalled to their vessel when their quarry escaped. Juniper found him there, watching the stars. She made it, she confirmed. The rescue was successful. Owen nodded, still staring upward. Good. Her people transmitted something before they left, some kind of gift. Juniper held out a small data drive. Terraforming technology, not for oceans, but for deserts, wastelands, ways to heal our planet without changing it. He finally looked at her. An exchange. We helped her. She helped us. That's not all she left behind, Juniper said knowingly, glancing at the crystal he clutched. Owen smiled faintly. No, it isn't. 3 months later, Owen Mercer's rebuilt cabin stood on the same spot as before, but different in subtle ways. Solar arrays of unusual design, a communication dish unlike any commercial model, a garden growing plants with patterns that seemed to pulse gently under moonlight. And at night he would sit on his porch, the crystal beacon beside him, listening to the whispers of distant stars and waiting for the right one to answer. In the vastness of space, across unimaginable distances, Nithira stood on the observation deck of a Valyrian vessel, her hand resting on a similar crystal, her tears, like liquid starlight, falling for what she had left behind and what might yet be found again. After all, in a universe of infinite possibilities, some connections transcend the boundaries between worlds.